Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Damn You Hollywood. I'm Robert Winfree, and I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Not because the movie we saw was any good, oh no, but rather because finally, for once, after years and years and so many movies and so much time, I finally got one over on Mark, and I am deeply and profoundly happy about pretty much everything to do with that. I make no bones about the schadenfreude I feel at his displeasure over this particular film. So, yay me. Mark, how are you doing this evening?
Boo for you, Halloween. Oh, when ghosts and goblins by the score ring the bell of your front door, you better not be stingy or your nightmares will come true. Boo. Happy Halloween, Robert.
Yeah, it is, in fact, Halloween. And thankfully, there's not a lot of, there's someone actually outside my front door handing out candy rather than having them ring the bell and have my dogs go off every, 20 seconds.
Did you go out trick-or-treating? Right. Did you go get your free candy?
I'm 32.
Yeah, that doesn't stop people. Have you seen the pictures on Facebook?
I'd like to consider myself slightly more, I hate to just say cultured as a blanket statement, but more like aware of myself and the reality of the world around me than various 20-something millennial jack-offs who are going around trick-or-treating.
When did you stop trick-or-treating? Because I know I was still trick-or-treating to some degree as a teenager. You go out in all black, wear your black leather jacket, your black jeans, boots, and you throw on a mask. That's the whole costume. Whatever the mask is, it's going on, it's going on whatever black outfit you threw together. And I feel like 15, 16 was about where I hit my limit. When did you stop trick-or-treating?
Oh, I think I was younger than that. Probably 14, 15, something like that. There were geographic inconveniences.
Okay. Yeah, I used to really enjoy the holiday. I don't so much anymore. Now my favorite part of the holiday is actually going. I was telling my wife, I'm really enjoying going through Facebook and seeing everybody else's kids dressed up, and certainly I enjoyed pictures of I didn't get a chance to go trick-or-treating with my kids this year. I had to work. But my wife was good enough to send me pictures of my kids and my nephew trick-or-treating at my in-laws' neighborhood, and I rather enjoyed that. It's fun to see all the little kids in their costumes. You won't catch me out there, but it was fun to see other people doing it.
Yeah, it becomes a vicarious thing the older you get, I think.
So another Halloween tradition: watching scary movies. We had our family Halloween tradition yesterday. We watched the Disney's Halloween Treat, which is the whole thing's on YouTube. We watched that with the kids yesterday, which is basically 90 minutes of cut together footage with some narration from the more scarier, quote unquote, scarier elements of old Disney. A little bit of Snow White
like
here.
That terrible pumpkin, like a puppeteered puppet jack-o'-lantern between things providing narration.
That's one version of it. The version we watched last night didn't have the talking pumpkin. It had the mirror. The mirror was providing the narration at one point.
Okay. Well, if you're wondering why we're kind of taking our time getting through to this one, that's because tonight we'll be reviewing Jigsaw. And Mark doesn't really want to talk about it because Mark doesn't like things that are scary and or gross.
Actually, let me say this. I don't want to use the phrase "I learned something about myself" because I think I've known this for quite some time, but it became a prevalent thought in my mind as I watched Jigsaw, and I did watch it, ladies and gentlemen. I know on our on trial of Season of the Witch, I will quote myself here. I said, when it comes to horror, I'm a pussy, and I scare easily. One of the few times that I will admit that sort of thing. I scare very easily when it comes to horror movies. Is why I don't watch them. I don't particularly enjoy them because I don't enjoy being frightened. That being the case, I went into Jigsaw with my eyes wide open, ready to do this. I said, I've put Robert Winfree through at least 2 Transformers movies. There's going to be a third one next year. I've put him through so much pain and suffering. I'm going to get through this just because I'm a man, goddammit. And he threw the gauntlet down, and I said, fuck it. I ain't scared of shit. So I pick up that gauntlet, and into the movie theater I went. And here's what I figured out. And this goes to my review of the movie, but I wasn't scared by anything that I saw. I wasn't frightened. What I realized, though, is how little I cared about what was happening on screen because I didn't care about any of the people. And here's what I'm getting to. What I was realizing, or what kept occurring to me was, even if you tell me that these people are bad, these are bad people who did bad things and they deserve to be punished, I still don't particularly want to see them mutilated. I don't enjoy that. I want to see villains get their comeuppance, but I believe in justice. I don't believe in masochism. And that's all the movie was. It was just revenge masochism.
Sadism.
Mutilation for the sadism. Sorry, sadism. Sadism for the sake of entertaining people who enjoy sadism. And I'm not sadistic. Not in any way, shape, or form. It's a weird thing that I work in
the list of
a
movies we have scheduled for 2018 would beg to differ as it pertains to your sadistic natures, but I'll not belabor the point.
Shut up.
I'm right.
But I'm trying to make a point here. It's funny because I work in a correctional institution where it is often bandied about that, the people that we are in the service of caring for, controlling, and such, they want to see bad things happen to these people because they're bad people. And I have to often say, at least to myself, if not out loud, they deserve to be treated humanely. And while that sometimes may be difficult, depending on the nature of their crimes and the nature of their being, it doesn't give anyone the right to be a monster and treat these people inhumanely. So watching a movie filled with that sort of thing bore no entertainment value for me. I kind of was just watching this going, and there are elements of the movie that I found entertaining. You know, the whodunit part, you know, the part that was a murder mystery, a cop drama, if you will, I was okay with. But when it came down to the real meat of the thing, the main attraction, the reason why you go see these movies, I couldn't wait for the 90 minutes to go by fast enough. I was like, I don't understand why people watch this or why this is entertaining. And my final point about this is, I understand the movie is saying these are bad people and they deserve bad things to happen to them, but even with that, the movie did such a poor job of telling you more about these people to get you interested in their well-being that not only did I fundamentally disagree with the premise, I didn't even care enough about those people, these characters, to where, at least it was something I saw recently. Oh, okay. The one difference in the movie where I had a slight twinge of, like, I guess you could call it regret that the character allegedly, quote unquote, died. Spoiler alert. Is when I think it's Matt Passmore, who plays the doctor in this, and ultimately ends up becoming is the villain. Before that big reveal, when he dies allegedly, I was like, oh, that's sad. That was it. That's the one bit of emotion the movie evoked from me. So I felt the need to share that up front. That was you always have to think, what were your expectations? That was my viewing experience. Just sitting there wondering, what have we become as a society?
No, those are generally valid points, and let me just say that if you want my deeper thoughts on, like, this franchise, why I loved it to begin with, and my personal distaste for what it's become, please go into the archives, check out the Long Road to Ruin episode that Sean Comer and I did. It's a two-parter just on the Saw franchise. And just to note the way that we talk differently about the first three versus the second four. There's a marked difference that, again, we go into much greater detail about each of the movies individually over the course of those two episodes. So please, if you're curious about that beyond what we're going to talk about here, if you listen to me hammer this thing and you wonder why did you, A, insist on putting this on the schedule apart from just to torture Mark, and A, I don't actually need more of a reason than to torture Mark because he thought Geostorm was a good idea.
Still do.
Because he thought, what was it? Was that one from earlier this year that was just like, why? I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, the point there being, it's one of those franchises that I think when you see the first couple of movies, the first two specifically, if you're predisposed to enjoying intense, slightly gorier horror material, you will enjoy them. And there's elements of it that are so well done that it will engender within you a abiding affection and positive association that then subsequently gets dragged through the mud. I have and I believe the majority of you people out there as well, probably have a similar association with the Hellraiser franchise. The first two are exceptional. And then there's weird dips and ups and downs throughout the remaining movies. But the last two or three, I believe the last two specifically, are just the worst. But you watch them in large part because you've enjoyed some of the other entries into the franchise. Again, there's this deep abiding affection. I have the same thing with Tremors, because I loved the first Tremors movie. So much so that I actually did sit through Tremors 5, that just dumpster fire of an experience. It was awful. And for me, Saw is kind of that same way. That's one of the reasons I wanted it on here, not just to screw with Mark, but also because I'm like moderately curious about just how bad these things are going to get before it's all done away with. And we're getting pretty bad here. All right. As for the plot of this thing, such as it is, we do the... I almost don't want to give a synopsis because the synopsis reminds me that this is basically just like bad fan fiction of like the original trilogy. It's so weird. But I shall... there are two primary narratives going on here. One is a couple of police detectives looking for what appears to be a copycat of the Jigsaw killer. And then we have the 5 individuals going through a series of games that Jigsaw has put together. If this sounds very, very familiar with Saw, I believe it was 5? 3, 4, yeah, 5. That's because it's pretty much ripped straight out. It's like a carbon copy in terms of setup. Our players go through horrible experiences because that's what you do. Our investigators are, and we have a couple of police detectives, one of whom is loosely painted as a corrupt scumbag, and a couple of coroners, for want of a better phrase. Medical examiners, something along those lines, as they try to figure out where these poor people whose bodies they keep finding are being held, and who the copycat killer is. And there's a couple of very bad misdirects. There's the requisite amount of gore, the not patented, but ever since the first movie, there's now been, we have to have some kind of twist value crop up at the end of these things. And in this case, because, well, this is a creatively bankrupt project, they just ripped off one from at least like 2 other movies, I think, have done this exact same bit where, no, the game we are watching was played in the past. And I won't tell you which movies that particular bit comes from in the franchise, because you may as well have some degree of mystery around these things. And this was actually one of Jigsaw's first games. We reveal that one of the doctors is the guy who's been killing people, and he's out for revenge because our shitbag detective let someone walk who wound up later killing his wife. I have so many issues with that whole bit of narrative. So many, because it just runs so counterintuitive to... that's a whole other discussion. But he frames said, terrible cop as the new resurgent Jigsaw killer, and he gets to go on doing his things. This is kind of a mess. I mean, again, like, the most damning thing I can say about this is watching this movie, this felt like a bad piece of fan fiction that was written by someone who really liked the, original trilogy, the Amanda trilogy, I believe it's referred to as by fans, and then conned their parents and a few friends in film school into letting them make it. It just feels so cheap. Some of that's because it is, but more importantly, it actually, and I said this about the original Saw, because the original Saw had a very small budget as well. It was less than... It might have been less than $10 million, but it never felt all that cheap. This one feels cheap. It feels unbelievably derivative, especially if you're a fan of the franchise. You can spot everything coming a mile away because there's no creativity. There's nothing interesting. It's just, let's try to cash in some more on this franchise before... because we're so desperate for, financially successful films this year. I don't know. That's all I can kind of come up with as far as this goes. Okay. Mark, I will put you on the spot a little bit here. You said I'm curious about this. You said that parts of the detective story where they're like trying to figure out, who is the, Jigsaw's copycat, because I want to say this actually briefly before I throw it to you. Every time they try to open one of these with the, maybe Jigsaw's back, I want to throw something. For a very specific reason. The entire opening bit for Saw 3 is actually the autopsy of John Kramer. They actually show, the autopsy process that went into this guy. He's not only dead, he's been cut open. We've seen his body. We've seen him, again, cut open and measured and dissected. Why do you think... Why are you trying to tell me that he's alive? There's nothing supernatural about this. Quit insulting everyone's intelligence. Anyway, and by the way, when the fact that they tried to do that and then actually showed, I can't say anything bad about Tobin Bell because he's awesome. But the fact that they, apart from, setting up they telegraphed this so badly, that ending. They're like, no, what you're actually watching took place in the past. Again, so badly telegraphed. I'm not entirely sure I haven't, like signal flares. It was terrible. I think I said this about Colby Covington striking, that when his striking was so telegraphed, he may as well have been using semaphores. Just like that ship-to-ship flag communication. That's how bad this is. But you mentioned that there were a few things that you enjoyed, or that you kind of liked about this, or that you at least didn't find completely repellent. So I will specifically ask you, what about this didn't make you want to run for the exit? Made you think that, maybe I won't quite curse Robert as much as I thought I would?
Well, look, I didn't know what the Saw franchise was. Apart from the obvious. I knew it was torture porn. I knew that it was, what do you call them, Rube Goldberg devices that people are strapped into, and they die in horrendous ways. So I knew that much about it, so I didn't want to go see it. I don't enjoy that sort of thing. I think I mentioned that before. However, what I did not realize was, or at least I can't speak to the other movies. I've never seen them, and even though I did listen to the Long Road to Ruin that you guys did while I was on one of my hiatuses, I don't remember enough about what you guys said to comment on it intelligently. So I will say this. Like I said, I didn't really know what I was in for. And I was pleasantly surprised that at least there was a semblance of a murder mystery. That's it. There was, here's your cops, here's your medical personnel, here's your murder mystery, and let's watch these people try to solve this crime. And you had, the various misdirects. There was it's pointing at the girl, and then it's pointing at the guy, and then it's pointing at the cop, and they're all sort of pointing at each other. And we get to the very end of this thing, and there's this final reveal that it's the coroner who it turns out to be Jigsaw's apprentice as such. I was fine with that. In the sense that I found it entertaining. That part of it, that part of the movie I found entertaining. I was legitimately interested in the detective story that they were telling. And it was almost like watching two different movies. There was the games part, and we'll say we'll call it the games part and the detective part. When it focused on the detective part, I was into it. I watched with rapt attention. I was interested in what the characters were doing and the story that they were trying to tell. And then it would shift back to the games, and I found myself looking at everything but the screen. Now, part of that is I don't want to see bodies being mutilated, and that's a lot of what it was. But part of it was also I'm not interested in that story. There's nothing about people being, chained to a wall with buzzsaws to me. Or the guy with his leg caught in the. Though I found that kind of funny. Well, he's trying to escape and he goes through the floor. That literally and figuratively, they're supposed to be building up tension around this guy's leg, which eventually gets eviscerated. And I'm like, okay. So, I just don't care. And then they would pull away, and I have to give the editor and the director a lot of credit here, because you never stayed too long in one area. And I thought they did a pretty good job of cutting up the movie, no pun intended, in half, and in such a way that, we're going to spend a little bit of time with the detective story, a little bit of time with the games, and then we're going to go flip back and forth, and we're never going to spend too much time with either one. So, because we have a mixed audience, I'm sure. We have people like Mark who are more interested in the cop part of this, the detective part, and you have probably the majority of the audience who are strictly there to see people mutilated. And you don't want to piss them off by not giving them enough gore. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Leo, listening to you talk, I really do want to get you to watch the original. The first two actually are really. There's certainly graphic elements. The second one more so than the first, but if you've I've brought this up in the past. If you've seen Seven,
I have.
Then you've seen more on-screen violence than you'll get out of the first Saw movie.
Okay, that sounds like I can tolerate it.
It's all designed to be very intense, but there's so little. You see the after. It's one of the brilliant things that went into actually the filming and creation of the first Saw movie is they didn't have the budget to really do a lot of graphic stuff, so they do the intelligent thing and either show you characters reacting to it, or they actually will show photographs very briefly of some of this, and it's a really great film technique because you're never going to put something on screen that's worse than what your imagination can come up with.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons I think so many people reacted so viscerally to that movie as opposed to some of the follow-ups when they just okay, we're going to show you somebody's head being split open with bad CGI. Thanks, guys. Versus the implication of same without ever actually showing it. Again, restraint in filmmaking. It's a wonderful thing.
So let's get to the critical elements of this thing. Let's move this along.
Yeah. I don't have anything good to say here. None of the acting's all that interesting.
I don't get to go. I don't get to go first. What happened? Are we doing things differently?
Let me go first here.
Okay.
Because I might wind up being harsher than you on this, and I'd rather you kind of try to temper it. None of the acting here is all that. It's rare that you get truly phenomenal performances out of horror movies, but there are some that exist, and they deserve to be recognized and celebrated more so than they are. But when I say the acting isn't good, I don't necessarily my standard here is not, well, it's bad for the average prestige film from Paramount Studios. No, this is bad acting even for a horror movie. It's just the guy whose name I can't remember, Nelson. The guy who's supposed to be the resurgent Jigsaw killer, just oh god, so bad, so flat, just flat. Deeply uninteresting. You guys couldn't spring for Cary Elwes to come back? Would have been so nice. The writing is bad. Mark, you brought it up. You don't care about the characters. And if you don't actually care about these people, then you can't either derive tension from their near demise or satisfaction from their demise if they're that terrible of a person. they're just talking heads. There's nothing there. And because there's nothing there, there's no emotional reaction from the audience, apart from maybe the occasional visceral bit about, oh, that was gross. But that's so weak. That's nothing. Like, you shouldn't be proud of that. You should be ashamed of yourself. But the only thing you could elicit as far as a reaction go in 90 minutes of runtime was the occasional gag reflex of the weak-stomached. The visual effects are bad. Again, the CGI is just... it's not good. It's really not good. That whole last bit when the guy's head falls apart. I watched that and I just went, really? I mean, I'll give them... there's a little bit of credit that needs to be given to the... either the physical... because I believe this was done physically. The bodies, when they actually examine them, are done rather well. But anything else, like, nope. Nope. Looks awful. Yeah, again, this feels like bad fanfic. Like, okay, they did X, Y, and Z in these other entries, so let's just do X, Y, and Z again. They'll never see that coming. Really? Like, I mean, your whole audience here is people who have seen these movies. It's just like the dumbest thing ever. You're not drawing in a new wave of fans. I mean, everyone who is seeing this one, which is the 8th. Let me double check here. It's the 8th or 9th movie in this. It's 8th. Okay, it's the 8th movie in this franchise. It's a fair bet to say that anyone who's actually seeing this has seen the other movies and is therefore going to see everything you're doing and know exactly what's coming because you freaking suck. Again, like, the only positive, there's a little bit of the physical, some physical effects work that was pretty nice. And Tobin Bell is always going to be awesome as Jigsaw. And I know why they keep bringing him back and finding excuses to bring him back, because he's the only decent thing about half of these movies. But you've got to come up with a better way to do this, guys. I mean, the only bit in this entire movie that actually felt like part of the Saw franchise when it actually is good, when it doesn't suck, was that last bit when he gives those two people that are chained to the wall the double-barreled shotgun with a single shell. And, this is your key to freedom, figure it out. And, the way that comes back to bite them with how they play that, that was good. Like, that's a Jigsaw thing to do. Everything else about this movie, I just wanted to, put my head through a wall. Just, no, it's not good. I can't say anything good about...
I actually have a real big issue with that scene. Not with the execution as such, but Tobin Bell's performance in that scene. I said to Sean on Thursday when we looked at Halloween 3, I said, there comes a point in a performance where you really need to turn it on, turn the gauge up to 11, really be engaging, chew the scenery, do something, but raise the level of your performance, to create something truly memorable. And my problem with Season of the Witch was, when he's finally giving the big reveal as to what his plan is, he's just sort of saying it, and it's flat and uninteresting. And Sean was like, "Oh well, it comes across as creepy that way." And I'm like, "No, I thought it came across as just boring." I had the same problem here with that scene, where there was an opportunity. I mean, I don't necessarily need him to go Christopher Lloyd and Roger Rabbit. Remember me, Eddie? I said that of Season of the Witch. I didn't need him to hit that pitch in that scene, but it didn't come across as he seemed interested either. It was kind of, here's a shotgun, there's one shell in it, lots of luck, and walked out of the room. Like, the whole...
if I might defend that very briefly I feel like a lot of that is your... and this isn't you personally, but if this was the first movie of this franchise that you'd seen, yeah, I get why you feel that way.
Okay.
Jigsaw's whole thing is that he is extraordinarily dispassionate. And when it's done right, it actually makes him creepier. He is utterly implacable.
It did not achieve that level, and I get that. That was, again, Sean's argument for Season of the Witch, which I get. But just because you are dispassionate, or just because you are, I forget the word that Sean used, but if you're giving sort of a calm, measured performance, by virtue of you doing so, it doesn't make it good. It still has to be good. It still has to be engaging. This wasn't.
When Jigsaw is written properly, it comes across a lot better. There's whole huge sequences in the second movie that are just him and like Donnie Wahlberg talking, and he is creepy despite being physically like riddled with cancer at that point and not a threat physically at all. When it's written properly, it works. I agree with you. I don't think it works as well in this instance. I feel like they're probably using the excuse. They get to lean on the excuse of, well, Jigsaw's not a very flamboyant, over-the-top character, and he isn't. But that shouldn't be an excuse for you to write bad dialogue.
Yeah, I'm thinking about some of the Quentin Tarantino movies, which are known for their monologues. More specifically, I'm thinking about The Hateful Eight, which we talked about 2 years ago. There are a lot of monologues in that movie, but they're all delivered with a degree of intensity. Whether it's Samuel L. Jackson talking about getting a blowjob in the snow, or some of the other bits of dialogue in that. Nobody in that movie is necessarily chewing the scenery with gusto, but there's an intensity again to their performances that kept me engaged in a movie where there's hardly any action. That is a stage play captured on screen. Which we talked about at the time. It's just long stretches of dialogue, which you can do, but you have to do it effectively, and that comes down to performance and the script. As you said, if the dialogue is bad, it takes a real special person to turn into something interesting. But I just felt like we're finally at the denouement of this entire performance. We are things are hitting a fever pitch. At least Matt Passmore gave it a shot. Call Matt Passmore flat and everything else.
The second coming of Jai Courtney.
I didn't think it was that bad. But when he turns into, when he does the final reveal and he takes the collar off his neck and he turns into Jigsaw, I'm not saying it's a great performance, but at least he tried. Okay? He really did go for creepy. He didn't quite get it. And I don't think he's a great actor. This is the problem. That fell down so hard for me. But at least he tried, is my point. It's kind of like watching
Reeves tried to be creepy once or twice too. It didn't work. I understand what you're saying. I'll give him credit for trying. Unfortunately for me, when someone tries for creepy and fails, it takes me out. That's almost worse than them not really trying.
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of watching a child's performance. Generally speaking, it's not good. But, aren't they adorable? Isn't it cute to kind of watch them try? It's fun to see little kids up there doing a school play. It's terrible on its face, but it's cute to watch them try. And that's all I could think about during that entire thing. It was like, oh, you're adorable. It's like, I was trying not to laugh during that scene because, people were really into it. And I'm like, I don't want to be like, the whole time, as he goes from, he talks normal through the entire feature. And then at the end, he's like, and you let all these criminals get away. It's like, what are you, channeling the Emperor from Star Wars? What the fuck is wrong with you? Talk normal.
I had a very similar reaction to great movie, by the way, this one I'm going to reference, but there's a scene in John Wick where Keanu Reeves tries to go for intimidating and creepy. And I really like that movie. I really do. It's a great throwback style of like pseudo-revenge, just enough character and enough to get you invested in understanding why people are doing what they're doing. The gunplay and the fights are all well choreographed and executed. And then there's this one scene where he tries to be intimidating, and it just doesn't work. Like, he's scarier when he's, unstoppable but unspeaking than when he's trying to sell you on being creepy. It's weird, but again, I get what you're saying. Like, it just, again, like, there's no really good acting in this. And again, even by the standards of your average horror movie, the acting is just kind of blah.
I want to talk about the games for a minute, because I thought, having never seen these movies before, getting away from the gruesome murdering of people in each of one of these scenes, the first one is way stupid. The Buckethead scene, where the one of them. Let me say this. If you're waiting for me to say something positive about this movie, about the games part of it, I will say this. And the one female character kind of summed it up. If it's a game, then it's winnable. And I did like the idea that it isn't just, these aren't just sort of Batman 66 torture murder devices with no way out of them except, Batman reaches into his utility belt, pulls out the shark repellent, and voila, lobster. It isn't that. It's, here's the thing, here's the puzzle, figure out the puzzle or you die. Okay, that I can actually bite into. I like a good puzzle. I like a good mystery. I like, watching people sort of figure things out. So, and then there's somewhat of the added tension of, if you don't figure out the puzzle, you're going to be eviscerated. So that actually hooked me.
Yeah, the better entries into this franchise, I think you might actually enjoy, because there's a fair amount of that, and it is really interesting to watch.
Right. So, as she said, these are winnable. There is a way out of these things. You're not just waiting to be ripped to shreds. So let's talk about them in pieces here. The Buckethead thing, I just thought was stupid, because it's like, okay, well, the only way out of that is to cut yourself. All right. Yeah, let's turn the page. The next one I was really fascinated by, because it keyed into the one character and what she did wrong and how she went about it. And what annoyed me was she figures out that she robbed this woman for $3.53, and then the woman died, and it's her fault, and she had an opportunity to help her, and she didn't, and that's the big sin that she's being punished for. But what killed me was I'm looking at the other, as she's starting to figure out that there's a 3.53 on one of the needles. That's clearly the answer. That's clearly the one that she needed to pick. And it's Mitch, who's just a bag, or Ryan. No,
I think it was Ryan.
Sorry, it's Ryan.
Ryan's the one who's actually holding the syringes.
Yeah, Ryan, who's just a giant bag of shit through this entire movie, has got all the needles, and he's just so stupid. It's like he went out of his way to murder this woman to save himself when it was clear what the answer was.
The only thing I'll say about that is once he starts being hanged, like once that whole mechanism kicks in, yeah, he's not gonna. I understand at that point he's not gonna. Okay, this is the correct needle. I'm gonna use this one. It's like, no, I'm going to stab you with my fistful of needles because I'm losing oxygen. Like, I'm going to die very shortly if I don't do this. But the fact that, during the whole setup before that, none of them actually articulated. Again, like, she kind of figures out, oh, this is the right one, and then doesn't actually say, no, it's that one, give me that one.
Yeah.
And as she's sitting there flip-flopping, everyone else just, like, because they know this, bad stuff is about to happen, they're like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, and she just never actually says, yes, that one, give me that one.
Right.
Because people are stupid.
Yeah, it was. Not only are these bags of shit, but they're also dumb as shit. So we move on to the next one, and I found myself asking, what happens if Ryan doesn't try to escape? How was this supposed to go? Because the mechanism, the way that this was shot, the mechanism to stop the grains from burying the other two characters. And what if all three of them had walked in there? See, that didn't make any sense to me. The whole thing is they walk into that room.
I can actually kind of help you with that.
Yeah, because I'm like...
Because
hang on,
let me on that...
Okay, let me explain my confusion here.
Okay.
If he doesn't try to escape and they all walk into the silo, how were they supposed to get out? If the mechanism
silo only
to do
opened
that,
because he stepped on that.
Okay. So in other words, if he doesn't try to escape, then the silo doesn't open and they're just stuck in there.
No, the other door opens, the one they go through after that.
Yeah, this is why I used to get frustrated playing Myst. Like, if you don't do one thing, you just stand in the room for hours on end trying to figure out what the fucking clue is.
No, again, like, the whole silo thing doesn't happen if he doesn't step through that, rotted wood and get his leg caught, and they just go through the door they were supposed to go through to begin with, which led into the next game that we'll get to in a second. Like, all three of them were supposed to be completely whole going into that one, but because Ryan made that particular choice, it opened up this other sub-game that otherwise they could have bypassed completely.
Yeah, that still sucks, though. And I think that's just poor planning on Jigsaw's part.
No, I actually think it's good planning because he allowed for them to potentially try to deviate from his plan. Like, bad planning is just he spray paints no exit and chains it shut and leaves it at that.
No, what I'm saying is, if each one of these rooms is designed to target an individual person and punish them for their misdeeds, but that room could have been bypassed entirely had they just stayed on the yellow brick road and not gotten, and not tried to cheat, then what was the point of that room at all?
In case they tried to cheat.
But why was there? Maybe I'm overthinking this, but was there a possibility of cheating in every room that ends in disaster, or just that one? See, it's a little too contrived.
Just that one, because that was the only one with a door out of the building.
It's contrived. It's too contrived.
Of course,
it drove
it's contrived.
Me crazy. I can get around I can wrap my head around the idea of every room is a punishment room designed to murder one of them for their misdeeds. I can't get behind the idea of, well, this one particular room has a just in case you're a real fucking idiot part. Like, come on. It irritated me.
I'm okay with it.
So anyway, so they get out of that sequence, and then there's the spiral thing that's set to kill what's his face, Van Peebles. Yeah. And she tries to.
I always laugh because in pretty much every one of these movies, especially once we get to 4, I have always laughed at one part.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually something like this one, where somebody is given the opportunity to actually fix their problem. Like, he's got to reach down through this spiral and pull the handbrake to stop the spinning wheel of death. And somebody provides some kind of assistance that makes this immediately possible safely, and they don't take it. And
right.
I always have to laugh at that, because that's the only reaction you can have.
Was it me, or was that sequence edited poorly? Like, I was having some difficulties following what was happening there.
I didn't have any problems of that nature.
Okay, I mean, I understood in general what was happening and what they were trying to do. I don't know. The way that it was shot and edited just seemed a bit clunky to me.
That's fair.
And then after that, we finally get to the end sequence, which I've already discussed. I liked the idea of, this is the Joker, in the two boats. Okay, one of you doesn't kill the other, everyone dies. And the idea is you're supposed to rise above this sort of thing, open the shotgun, find the keys, and set yourselves out. Because if you use the shotgun, you fuck both of you. Okay, got it. I actually like that. Again, it's the two Jokers from the Dark Knight. Here's my problem. We already discussed it. I'm not going to belabor the point. I thought Tobin Bell's performance in that scene sucked. I actually liked Ryan's performance. Once the gun's gone off and it kills the other chick, and he's realizing
what happened.
Yeah, and he realizes he's completely fucked. He's going to die in that room, and he's going to die of starvation, basically.
Blood loss first.
So and he really that actor really does a great job of capturing that sense of loss. That regret, all of it. He suddenly realizes he's doomed. And he's going to die slowly and horribly, and that he was so close to getting out of it, but the worst part of both of them prevailed, and that I actually liked, and I kind of wish the movie had just ended there, but then we have the silly sequence with the final silly sequence between the cop and Logan, and here's what I want to say about that. There was an opportunity to make a better movie out of this had they actually focused a little bit more on the detective and shown his misdeeds.
Yeah.
If they had written a story, and I'm not saying take all the games out of it, but if the story focuses so much on Logan and his assistant and pointing the fingers at them, that they miss the opportunity to tell the detective story so that when he finally does get his comeuppance, there's some evocation of feeling there. I feel nothing because I know nothing. He's just, I'm not, they don't really establish, I mean, just a sort of, deathbed confession at the very end of the movie isn't very interesting. So the fact that he's like, I let all these people go, and I was a shitty cop, and blah 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 blah. Where was any of that in the show him taking a bribe, show him at the beginning of the movie letting somebody off the hook, so at least it establishes all of that. So later on when he gets his comeuppance, at least you can kind of go back to those scenes and go, oh, I get it now. He's a shitty person, and blah blah yakety schmackety. He's just doing his job through most of the movie. You don't really get a sense that he's a bad guy, and then and then he just yells at you on screen that he's a bad guy, and then he gets his fucking head sliced open. I'm like, and you're right. That last image was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's so stupid.
It really is. It's just the worst.
But you see what I'm saying about they didn't tell his story. And then they tried to make up for it at the end, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I agree completely. Again, it's one of the things that if you get into the good entries into this franchise, you actually do spend enough time with the people involved to care, whether that's wanting to see them suffer and die or wanting to see them not suffer and die. And I mean, the second one's a really good example of this. There's a lot of people there. There's a lot of players in that one. The first one is a very minimalist movie. There's less than 10 really speaking roles, if memory serves. And so you kind of, by definition, you spend more time with some of these people. In two, there's a lot of players, but the ones that stick around long enough they do enough generally to get you to care a little bit about them one way or the other. And it's not always big things that they do, but there's enough time and enough attention given to them that you form an opinion one way or the other. And you get absolutely none of that out of this guy.
That's really it. I don't have a whole lot else to say about the movie. I wasn't frightened in any way, so I think there is a big failure of the movie. And, you know, I don't need to repeat how I feel about things that are grotesque. I wish they had... I thought there was an interesting murder mystery here, but I think it could have been done better. And, you know, I've the performance is kind of meh to at least you tried to not very engaging. So that's my thoughts on Jigsaw.
Yeah, I really wish they had let this franchise die after the last one, because the last one sucked too.
All right, are you ready for the money?
Yeah, because hey, it's profitable.
Yeah, it is.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar.
All righty. With a budget of a mere pittance, $10 million. Its opening weekend so far worldwide, $29 million. Now, the interesting thing about this is I was actually looking at all of the weekends so far this year, and looking at, you know, which had the best weekends, the worst weekends, you know, in terms of grosses, and this has, in terms of worldwide gross, this past weekend, second worst of the year. The only one that was worse was August 25th through the 27th, in which case The Hitman's Bodyguard was the number one movie. And that came in at a worldwide overall gross $69 million. This past weekend, it was $75 million. Not good. Not good at all. The best weekend this year so far was March 17th through the 19th, and the number one movie that weekend was Beauty and the Beast. No shit, Sherlock. But yeah, this was not a great weekend for the movies, you know. And while Jigsaw did its best, it not enough. And that certainly no competition to some of the weekends this summer. I mean, yeah, it's profitable at almost $30 million. We'll see how well it does going into the future. You know, we said this about Geostorm, and it bears repeating. Next week is this weekend is Thor, which is already made, you know, in just its international release. Before it's even hit domestic box office, it's at its domestic release. It's already made like $109 million. So I don't know how much more how much more money Jigsaw is going to make, but it'll
close out around 35 or so.
And again, that it's profitable, but meh, you know, it's not exactly, you know, when you look at the top 20 movies and how much they've made of the year, it's not even going to come close.
No, but hey, at least it's not a loss, unlike other major films, some of which we've reviewed.
You know, and good for Lionsgate. Let's see.
There hasn't been a single Saw movie that has lost money. They have all been profitable.
Looking at how good Lionsgate's doing this year, and
they don't have a
La
whole
La
lot
Land,
of releases this year.
No. Well, I was going to say their number one movie for this year came out last year, and it was La La Land. But as far as movies that came out this year, Lionsgate's best movies, their top 5 are John Wick, Power Rangers, The Hitman's Bodyguard, and The Shack. and only one of those, none of those made it over $100 million.
To be fair, I only think a couple of those really needed over $100 million. I believe John Wick was still profitable. Hitman's Bodyguard was, if memory serves, quite profitable. Power Rangers bombed hard, though.
Yeah, Power Rangers did not do well. John Wick made $171 million worldwide. So yeah, these are domestic totals. Power Rangers on a budget of $100 million made $142 million worldwide, so that's a loss.
That's a loss.
That's paddling. Yep. Hitman's Bodyguard was they did well with that one. That was only a $30 million budget, and worldwide it made $176 million. So good for Ryan Reynolds.
No,
They
I'm
also
not giving. Hang on. Appropriate credit needs to be given to the right place for that movie's success. Whoever scheduled it to come out when it did. Because that was placed in a dead couple of weeks, and it's like, oh, nothing's coming out here. Well, we've got a chance to succeed. Let's schedule our movie there, and succeed they did.
Tyler Perry's Boo 2 Medea Halloween was a Lionsgate release. And that had a production budget of $25 million, and so far it's made $36 million worldwide. So, it's not, hey, listen, they're not Paramount. Nobody at Lionsgate's on suicide watch, is my point.
Yeah, that's true.
So here's how the weekend broke down. Jigsaw was the number one movie this weekend with a domestic take of $16 million. Tyler Perry dropped from 1 to 2 with $10 million. Geostorm 2 to 3 with almost $6 million. Happy Death Day 3 to 4 with $5 million. Blade Runner dropped from 4 to 5 with $4 million. Thank You for Your Service debuted at number 6. It was followed by Only the Brave, The Foreigner, and the one movie that really fucking took a shit this weekend, it really bombed, was yet another Coen Brothers movie. This one with Matt Damon in the movies, Suburbicon. Debuted at number 9 with $2 million.
Yeah, the Coen Brothers tend to make movies that are more awards movies than the most commercially successful.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? It dropped from 7 to 10 with $2,500,000, and then our last debut of the weekend that I'm going to talk about is something called Let There Be Light, which debuted at number 11. I have no idea what that is. So that's how the weekend went. Not a whole lot of changes in the yearly totals. Again, looking at worldwide, same as it ever was.
And will be for another 3 weeks.
No, Thor will enter the top 10.
Yeah, Thor will enter the top 10 in the next 3 weeks, but it's not going to debut in the top 10. It'll take at least a full week for it to get there.
Justice League is also looking to track at $100 million. So we'll do this a little bit differently. We'll look at the bottom 5. We have Guardians of the Galaxy, which is pretty safe to stay in the top 10 at $863 million. Wonder Woman, fairly safe to stay in the top 10 at $121 million. Pirates, It, and Logan are all in danger of being knocked out of the top 10. Pirates is at number 8, It at number 9 with, this is funny actually, it's currently sitting at $666 million. Get it? 666? The number of the beast. And then Logan is at number 10 with $616 million. Yeah, all three of those are probably going to get knocked out of the top 10 by the year's end. Again, Star Wars, Justice League, and Thor.
I'm hoping at least one of those movies bombs just so I can laugh, but it's unlikely.
Well, you know that Star Wars is probably going to make $2 billion. I can't imagine less people will go see The Last Jedi than saw The Force Awakens. That would be crazy.
I can imagine that, actually.
I can't.
A lot of people felt conned by The Force Awakens.
and they'll still go see The Last Jedi. Everyone wants to see Luke Skywalker. This is his
I'd
movie.
really like. This is one of my things about it. Like, guys, if you don't want to see it, just don't see it. I wouldn't see it if I didn't have to.
But you think so that'll be the number one movie of the year more than likely. I figure Thor and Justice League will probably be somewhere between 3 and 7. So
Probably. I mean, again, I'm going to laugh real hard if one of them doesn't. Like, if one of those two doesn't make it into the top 10, somebody needs to be fired. Like,
again, tracking
if,
at 100.
If Justice League peters out at, like, say, 400 to 500 million, which was, I mean, Dawn of Justice. What did Dawn of Justice do? Because that was a severe underperformer.
Hang on, Dawn of Justice.
Bear in mind, when I say underperformer, it still did like 600 million, something like that, I think. But
no, Dawn of Justice did 873 million.
Okay, which was still underperforming as far as that relative to expectations, but
yeah, it needed to make $1 billion. It didn't.
Yeah, like they lost money if it didn't make $1 billion. But my point being, if Justice League peters out around, say, the 600 to 700 million mark, I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna laugh hard.
Just the final word on Jigsaw's money. So $29 million on a $10 million budget's not bad, but it too underperformed. Not as high as it was initially tracking to be. So any guesses
now
as
please
to whether or not
leave the franchise alone, Lionsgate. You have milked all that you're gonna get out of it. Stop it.
Well, they got a new Jigsaw now, so they have a whole new series
They
of
had a
movies
new
they could make.
Jigsaw after the last movie that they just summarily ignored for this one.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. All right, are you ready?
Like they've ended like 3 of the last 4 or 5 movies in that franchise with "Here's your new Jigsaw." It's just like, anyway.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Okay, here we go. Siddhant Adlaka from birth.movies.death. You could say everything you need to about Jigsaw without ever mentioning the one film called Jigsaw, which is especially egregious since it positions itself as a vital puzzle piece. It isn't.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, like, the whole thing feels like bad fan fiction. There's like 3 or 4 movies in this franchise that we could discuss independently, and between the 4 of them, you get this movie.
Sarah Dobbs of Sci-Fi Now. Jigsaw isn't just retreading old ground. It's new and old at the same time. A complex, tense, and brutal gore fest that feels completely unlike any horror movie of the past decade.
Have you watched any horror movies from the like? That doesn't even make sense. Like, how did you compose that sentence? I mean, no, like, how can you be that wrong? This feels like literally every other Saw movie. You say it doesn't feel stupid. Just stupid.
Matthew Rose of Salon.com, top critic, which brings us to Jigsaw, which fails for very much the same reasons as The Mummy. It was made to launch a franchise rather than because it was actually about something.
That is, your comparisons are fundamentally flawed on so many levels, you moron. All right, let's start with this. This was not intended to launch a franchise. It's already in a franchise. It's already in a very successful franchise. It's not launching anything. So you're just, like, completely ass backwards. 2, this didn't fail for the same reasons The Mummy failed. I mean, by definition, this has not failed. It made money. The Mummy failed because nobody wanted that. It had a bloated budget. It was trying to be saleable just on Tom Cruise's name, which doesn't carry nearly as much weight as it used to. And the entire thing was shot in front of a terrible, terrible green screen. Like, the effects in this movie were bad, but at least there were actual sets rather than putting Tom Cruise on a treadmill in front of a green screen and like, okay, we'll fill in the explosions later. How? How did you make that connection? It's so misguided.
Okay. Elena Lazik of Little White Lies. Jigsaw isn't any less competent than the best of its predecessors, but it is little more than a capable rehash of things these films have done over and over.
I fundamentally disagree with the first part of that. Like, the really good entries into this franchise, whether you like them or not, there's a lot of good craft that went into them. There's not that here. Just stupid. Just like fundamentally stupid.
John Fink of the Film Stage. Jigsaw is hollow genre exercise from a series that once dared to dip its toe into the healthcare debate.
Oh, shut up, you flaming jackass. How dare you? How dare you reference that movie? How dare you reference that one? That one is awful. Like, no. You want to mention that the Saw franchise has good entries into it. I agree with you, but no, the time when they took on healthcare, boy, that sure was a good entry. You moron. That is an awful. Like, that might be the worst. That literally might be the worst entry into this franchise. In no small part because it spends so much time preaching about the evils of healthcare providers. I mean, I don't know who wrote that or what they did to siphon off Bernie Sanders' nightmare fuel. Like, the good entries into this franchise are just really good horror movies. But because you'd rather, no, they actually tackled healthcare at one point, and boy, we sure do applaud that. That movie sucked ass. Did you actually see it, Mr. Reviewer? Because I assume you didn't. If you're referencing it as anything other than utter crap. Awful.
I've actually seen quite a lot of reviews that reference the healthcare thing. You know, it's a fat lot of good it's done us so far. We elected a guy who swore to tear down universal health care. But anyway, moving right along.
I mean, seriously, I probably would rate that as the worst entry into the whole franchise, and these people are holding it up as some kind of pedestal because the espoused beliefs line up with yours, therefore the movie is good? You self-righteous pontificating jackoff. Like, how dare you? How dare you use what should be a platform for professionalism and disseminating knowledge and your perspective to the world as an excuse to masturbate with words? Who hires these people?
Dennis Schwartz of Osis' World Movie Reviews. There is nothing to see here that needs to be seen.
I would generally agree with that. Of course, I'd agree with that about a lot of movies, like Transformers and Geostorm.
You know, it's getting to the point where I'm going to start telling people to take a drink whenever you mention Transformers. You specifically.
That might be worth looking into then. I can kill people with alcohol poisoning vicariously.
William Bibiani of IGN Movies. For the very first time, it feels like the makers of a Saw movie aren't even interested in their own game.
No, it's the second or third time that's happened. Number 5 or 6 had a lot of that same, like, we just don't care anymore type of feel to it.
Emily Yoshida of New York Magazine and Vulture, top critic. Watching Jigsaw go about his torture business is about as interesting as watching a child burn ants. a dumb and ugly waste of energy, resources, and time.
See, I would kind of disagree with part of that. This is not the same as watching a child burn ants. If you want to call it dumb, sure, it's kind of dumb. You want to call it ugly, sure, parts of it are ugly. But I think you have fundamentally missed the point of what and how Jigsaw operates. Of course, so did the writers of this movie. I think that's all I got there.
Okay. Saw 3D garnered the worst reviews of any Saw flick, scoring 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, of course, they had to make another one. That's Steve Newton of Georgia Strait.
That's a relatively fair point. Because, yeah, again, Saw 3D, not good at all. Under pretty much any circumstances.
All right. Let's see here. Norman Weiler of Now Toronto. Look, if you enjoyed the previous installments, you'll like this one too. It's designed to be precisely the same experience. This is not an endorsement.
Okay, see, now I feel like you're being unnecessarily insulting to people who do kind of enjoy horror movies. Like, oh, you enjoyed elements of these other ones. Sure, you will probably enjoy the most dumbed down, asinine version of this because you clearly don't know any better. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen them to be like. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, how can you take these people seriously when the implications thrown about here are that, well, even we think these all suck, so you'll probably like these ones even though they suck more. Like, it's again, it's like insulting. It's actively insulting.
You know, I know I've said this before whenever we do this bit, but it always seems like reviewers don't actually like the movies.
I know.
Like, oh, we have to go watch a movie? God damn it. This is terrible.
I'd so much rather be, trolling through various social media echo chambers and espousing my liberal propaganda. How dare I actually have to watch a movie and review it? Because it's in your freaking job description? Maybe. I mean, I'd rather accept, like, old man Morgenstern's position of I'm old and hate everything. Like, that's at least acceptable to me on some level.
Simon Abrams of RogerEbert.com, top critic. It's fun to watch. I just don't think it's the kind of fun filmmakers planned.
That's probably fair.
Let's see. Let's find one more good one. Kath Clark of Guardian. A slick, soulless horror flick just in time for Halloween. More trick than treat.
No, this is not. Again, like, there's nothing really impressive about the making of this film. Again, other entries into this franchise, it's interesting to see how it's done and the craft that went into it. Here, not so much. Here it's just kind of presented. I mean, as much as I'm insulted by, that reviewer, I should probably be somewhat insulted by the filmmakers in this who just clearly were just rehashing old material, but hey, they like the movie, so they'll see this one. Like, how dare you? How dare the lot of you? Shame on you.
All right, last one. Rob Lean of Den of Geek. The cast just about sells it all, making the brisk runtime fly by. You'll wince, you'll while away 90 minutes, and you'll struggle to work it all out. What more do you expect from a Saw film?
Hey, oh, you. Okay. No. You, sir.
Get him, Winfree. Get him.
Has the only thing you've seen as a film been like Plan 9 from Outer Space and The Room? Because, I mean, if your only frame of reference is like literally the worst movies made, then maybe the acting in this looks good. But only if your only frame of reference, like your local community theater has acting on par with this. Like, how can you possibly go along with that? And then what do I expect from a Saw movie? I expect something that makes a degree of sense. Let's start there. I expect something that engages me as a viewer. I expect characters that I care at least a modicum about the outcome of. You people just don't seem to understand. Again, there's this fundamental misunderstanding about why the good entries into this franchise are good and gave it a positive reputation. You wanted it distilled down into bullet points that you could then rehash ad nauseum because that's how you think, apparently, and the bullet points don't really do it justice, and that gets lost on people who just want, more of that. Boy, that Shield match really was great. Well, what was great about it? Well, Roman Reigns did this thing good. More Roman Reigns. Like, no, that is not how this works. How can you... you're so deeply and fundamentally wrong about this. I expect something that isn't this bad. How about that?
Scott Mendelson of Forbes. It doesn't justify a 7 years later return of a once novel, unique horror franchise.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I just like to read his stuff. I think that's it. I don't think any one of either the rest of the reviewers or whatever. Yeah, there's only 3 left that I haven't read.
I'll leave it then.
Nope, we got to end on this one. Kim Newman of Empire Magazine. If you don't like Saw, this isn't going to change your mind, but it's a skillful, satisfying schlock and respectful of its fan base. And the final death is a show-stopping coup de... and the final death is a show-stopping coup de grace.
How? Really? Like that horrible, horrible CGI'd octopus tentacle effect really did it for this guy? I mean, what is your baseline here? Like, do you not... Is your basis for bad effects in film on a digital spectrum something that is below 16 bits? Because I imagine it has to be that bad if that thing doesn't... No, this isn't respectful of its fan base. It's horribly derivative. It doesn't try to do anything interesting or useful or new. It just rehashes old material. Again, like, this is the least respectful thing of all. It's like, okay, we did that. We'll plug in. It's this horrible Frankenstein abomination of mismatched, locked-together pieces from other entries into the franchise and then trying to sell it as something new. Like, no, wait, I'm pretty sure I saw that hand and that face. Like, I knew the people, like your family dies in a horrible car crash. Somebody pieces together an individual based on the wreckage and the leftovers, and then tries to pretend that it's a new person. Like, no, it's not respectful. It's insulting.
This was fun. All right, next week, everyone, Thor Ragnarok. It's going to be fantastic. Robert Winfree's going to love it.
I do not anticipate enjoying it, but I am open to having my mind changed by the actual movie. None of their promotional materials have filled me with any desire or hope about seeing it. But I have been misled by promotional materials for good and for ill in the past, and I am, of course, reserving final judgment until I've actually seen the darn thing.
It's going to be fantastic.
But if I think it sucks, I will stay here and I will be the lone guy on the hill saying, no, this is terrible, and be buried under the avalanche of how dare you disagree. I mentioned this before. There's a very real chance that the discussion of Thor is me being the old man going, get off my lawn, and Mark going, shut up and have fun.
It wouldn't be the first time on this show. Tomorrow night on the Metal Hammer of Doom is our Halloween show. It's a day late and $1 short, but that's all right. We're going to look at Motorhead, Undercover. It's Covers album. Woo-hoo. Get it? Undercover. Get it? Halloween. Trick or treat. Costumes. cosplay, covers, undercover. Get it? Motorhead. And then next week is all Thor all the time. We've got Thor Ragnarok or Thor Disassembled, whatever you like, on source material. The aforementioned Ragnarok movie review here on Damn You Hollywood. Hollywood if she could. We're going to jump in the Wayback Machine. We're going to look at an album by a band called Wizard. Wizard. Everyone, Wizard. And their album aptly titled Thor. And then finally on Trial, Sean and I will put Thor the Dark World on trial. I think he is prosecuting and I am defending, as it were.
There's things you can defend about that movie.
The final fight sequence is great. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, there's some great stuff. There's some solid interactions between Thor and Loki. Again, there's some pretty solid stuff in that. There's some certainly defensible material in Thor: The Dark World. There's some stuff that's inexcusably bad.
And then there's Malekith. All right, hey, I heard there's a pay-per-view this weekend.
I have to say this, like Loki's final bit there where he fakes his own death. How do neither of them decide, just for the sake of completion, because this guy's faked this crap before, I'm going to kick the corpse in the nuts? Like, just to see.
Gotta hit him with a hammer. Hey, I hear there's a pay-per-view this weekend. I hear a fighter that went into retirement is coming back. What about it? Is this Fedor Emelianenko? Is it Dan the Beast Severn? Is it Ken the Steroid Shamrock? Who is it, Robert Winfree? Who's coming back to save us all?
Nobody.
Who's coming back this weekend, Robert Winfree? Who's fighting?
No one. The main event is a great fight. It's a bantamweight title fight between Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. I really am looking forward to that fight.
You're not acknowledging the real main event, are you?
I barely acknowledge the existence of a hypothetical fight between the man who should be champion, but who has, through his own machinations and the machinations of the UFC, turned into perhaps the worst title reign in UFC history. I mean, okay, let me rephrase. The worst title reign in UFC history with at least one defense of the belt, because there's a bunch of people who just failed on their first attempt at defending it, and even some of those, that's still arguable, because some of those fighters lost their belt to a deserving contender. Whereas Michael Bisping, his first defense was against Dan Henderson for no reason other than, well, we think this will sell pay-per-views. It didn't. And he barely got by Old Man Henderson. I mean that, like, barely got a 3-2 decision. And rather than try to redeem his title reign by fighting a deserving number one contender, of which there were 4 guys he could have fought that were legitimate top contenders, and nobody would have complained about it. No, he fights Robert Whittaker or Yoel Romero or a rematch with Luke Rockhold. Or, again, like, Gegard Mousasi was still with the UFC at the time. Or Jacare. I don't think Jacare had lost to Whittaker yet. You have all these guys who are, like, on winning streaks, legitimately talented fighters. And his response is, well, I'm kind of sore because Dan Henderson almost knocked my head off again. And I want to fight GSP. I mean, his title reign is a farce. It is just a farce at this point.
I'm literally falling asleep. You need to wrap this up.
Anyway, UFC 217, the event in question, and I'm going to laugh when it does suboptimal pay-per-view buys as well, because I'm sadistic like that. You're the last fight to go on, and I'm praying for an injury to one of the fighters, just because I don't want to watch it, is a middleweight title fight between Michael Bisping and the returning George St. Pierre. I'm on record. I want GSP to win and then retire again. That is the sequence
Run
of
away
events
with the
I
belt,
want to happen.
All right.
It would
All right,
amuse me.
folks.
It's
That's
a great.
it for plugs
Anyway,
today.
hang on. It's a great card. Although it's a really, really good card. Like my distaste for the main event aside, the other
Yeah, your
4
girlfriend-
fights on the main card, great fights.
Is it your girlfriend's fighting?
I do not have a girlfriend, and you know that. Thank you, though, for once again reminding me of my crippling loneliness and antisocial disorders.
Your girlfriend, Joanna Champion.
She's not my girlfriend. I keep trying to explain this to you. She's actually engaged, I think.
To you? Muzzle time.
No. Why would she be? No. How? This is why you're entertained by Transformers, I guess. I don't know. Like that's the only. That's all I've got. Like no.
Robert and Joanna sitting in the tree. Punching. Get it? She's a fighter. Eh?
You need a new bit.
I'm deliriously tired.
You're about as entertaining as Gallagher.
Oh, yeah, I was telling my kids about him. About the man who smashed watermelons with a giant mallet. All right.
Anyway, so the point being, UFC 217 this Saturday. I will have coverage in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, so stop by, say hello. I appreciate it.
I might actually watch this one.
Well, of course, because you like freak show fights and terrible, terrible movies.
I do.
So again, stop by. Feel free to interact with the chat. If you the comment section, you can ask me questions if you happen to have them. I do my best to interact with the comments, with the section of the comments between fights when I have time. And if you want a full breakdown of that event, the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, we previewed it on Sunday. You can listen to that, where we talk about the fights, what we think will happen, so on and so forth. This coming Sunday, we'll review that event and preview Fight Night, I believe 120, which is a pretty solid free night of fights. Dustin Poirier and Anthony Pettis is a good main event. Matt Brown's fighting Diego Sanchez because violence, and really, who needs more of an incentive than that? Again, so we'll be previewing that card, which is, again, it's not bad. There's a couple of decent fights there. And
All right,
next
folks,
week, Mark and I will talk Thor, when he tries to explain to me that the Hulk makes everything better. And I try to explain to him that the Hulk is not interesting, because he's really not.
All right, folks. Be well, be safe, and behave. And more importantly, happy Halloween, everyone.
When the devil is too busy and death a bit too much, they call on me by name, you see, for my special touch. To the gentlemen, I'm misfortune. To the ladies, I'm surprise. But call me by any name, any